Moved to California many years ago to pursue acting, and I've only made a couple of movies in the entire time that I was there. So to be able to give my kids a better life and follow and pursue their dreams, whether it be my daughter as an equestrian, my son as a basketball player, my youngest son as a golfer.
When we said we wanted to bring him to the table, I was like, well, what do you want to talk about? He said, mushrooms.
And I feel like psychedelics are a way to tear down that wall and see what's beyond it. Doing it guided with people that are professionals, I feel like really increases the chances of having that mystical experience.
Mark Wahlberg dropped a quiet bombshell about Jada Pinkett's deep Hollywood secrets, and the truth behind his sudden exit from the industry may be far more disturbing than anyone expected.
It's a balance. I don't want to jam it down anybody's throat, but I do not deny my faith. That's an even bigger sin.
He didn't name names, but those close to him say he'd seen too much, too many blurred lines, too much power in the wrong hands. And somehow, Jada kept showing up in the middle of it.
Hey, young man, come on over. My husband just wants to touch you for a little while on camera. I promise you, you won't feel a thing. Sniff this.
This isn't just about an actress or a marriage. It's about why one of Hollywood's biggest names quietly left the system behind, and why that silence says more than anyone expected. Mark Wahlberg didn't storm out of Hollywood. He didn't call a press conference or drop a tell-all interview. He just left, packed up his family, and moved to Nevada, leaving behind the city that helped make him a global name. No theatrics, no scandal, just a quiet exit that said everything without saying a word.
Moved to California many years ago to pursue acting, and I've only made a couple of movies in the entire time that I was there.
To the public, it looked like a practical decision. Nevada has better taxes, fewer regulations, more space. But to those watching closely, especially within the industry, it felt like something else. A retreat, not from acting, but from what Hollywood had become.
To be able to give my kids a better life and follow and pursue their dreams, whether it be my daughter as an equestrian, my son as a basketball player, my youngest son as a golfer, this made a lot more sense for us.
Wahlberg had started speaking more openly about the things he didn't like: the rising crime in LA, the homelessness crisis, the political climate. But underneath all that, there was a growing discomfort with the culture of the industry itself, the way power was being used, the way influence worked behind the scenes. He wasn't naming names, but the vibe was clear. He didn't want to be around it anymore. In his pursuit of creating a clean and good version of Hollywood, Wahlberg hasn't been content with just making blockbuster movies. No, he envisions a holistic approach, training both aspiring actors and filmmakers to become the next generation of storytellers. His investments in strategic locations, along with plans for an $8 million training facility for UNLV film students, prove that he's walking the talk. With the film bill on the table, promising generous tax breaks for studios operating in Southern Nevada until 2043, Wahlberg's Hollywood 2.0 is poised for a stunning debut. By creating an environment that fosters creativity, inclusivity, and genuine storytelling, he's daring to challenge the status quo and build an entertainment empire that leaves no room for discrimination, gatekeeping, or shady dealings.
And the lights of Hollywood could soon be coming and shining in Las Vegas as the Nevada legislature debates its largest tax break package ever to bring productions to town.
With Wahlberg's Hollywood 2.0 on the horizon, the industry may finally be forced to reckon with its demons. His mission to create a cleaner, more virtuous Hollywood that values integrity and inclusivity challenges the very foundations on which the entertainment empire was built. And people started asking questions. Why now? Why leave at the peak of his influence when studios were still calling and projects were still lined up? The answer, at least in part, came down to what he was seeing and what he no longer wanted to be a part of. Behind closed doors, Wahlberg had reportedly grown tired of the manipulation, the exploitation, the way fame and silence went hand in hand. And there were names that came up more than once in those private conversations. One of them was Jada Pinkett Smith. Wahlberg never spoke about her directly, but industry whispers connected the dots. Jada had become a symbol of everything he found uncomfortable about modern Hollywood. Not just because of her personal life being so public, but because of what people believed was happening behind the scenes. This move to Nevada wasn't just about his kids or lifestyle. It was a reset, a way to step away from the machine without burning bridges or making headlines. He didn't make it a spectacle, but it was a statement, one that suggested something had pushed him too far. And whatever that something was, he wanted no part in it anymore. To really understand why Mark Wahlberg's quiet retreat from Hollywood raised eyebrows, we have to talk about the people he seemed to be backing away from. And near the top of that list, whether directly or indirectly, is the Smith family, specifically Jada Pinkett Smith. The Smiths have never tried to be traditional, that much is clear. But what once looked like openness and progressive thinking now seems to some like a carefully constructed front, one that gave Jada Pinkett Smith and Will Smith more control than anyone realized. For years, there were whispers about their marriage, that it wasn't real, that it was open, that it was hiding something. Jada confronted it back in 2009. She said it straight out. "I've heard all the things. He's gay, she's gay, they swing. I'll tell you what, it's too hard to be in a pretend marriage." She said it like she was shutting down rumors, but the line between denial and admission was blurry at best. And then in 2013, Jada added even more fuel to the fire when she posted on Facebook, "Will and I both can do whatever we want because we trust each other to do so. This does not mean we have an open relationship. This means we have a grown one." Again, she wasn't exactly clearing the air, just giving it a different spin. Instead of denying, she reframed it. By the time Will spoke up in 2021 during a GQ interview, the game had changed entirely. He said their marriage was non-monogamous and made it sound like it was all part of their journey toward personal growth. "We have given each other trust and freedom with the belief that everybody has to find their own way," he said. "Marriage for us can't be a prison." Jada never believed in conventional marriage. She grew up in a way that was very different than how I grew up. That last line stuck with people because it suggested that Will had been pulled into a structure he didn't choose, or at least not initially. That maybe this wasn't a mutual evolution. It was Jada leading and Will trying to keep up. And that's where people started wondering, was this relationship really built on trust and freedom? Or was Jada quietly directing the entire narrative? Was she crafting an empire, not just of fame and fortune, but of influence, control, and selective openness? The way their relationship played out in public certainly added to the confusion. In 2017, when asked on a talk show what the craziest rumor about her family was, Jada laughed and said, "That Will and I are swingers. That's the craziest one. It's constant." But she didn't sound shocked or offended, just amused. And this was just a year before the bombshell hit. In 2020, the entanglement with August Alsina became public.
I got into a different kind of entanglement with August.
Jada didn't deny it. Instead, she brought it to Red Table Talk and admitted to the relationship. But the details were even messier. August was a young artist, emotionally vulnerable, introduced to her through her son Jaden. He later claimed that Will had given him permission to be with Jada. Jada denied that part, but said she could see how August perceived it as permission. The whole thing painted a disturbing picture. A powerful woman involved with a much younger man who was part of her son's inner circle, while claiming it was all about personal healing and emotional growth. And Will, sitting beside her, looking emotionally hollowed out, confirmed that they had been separated during that time, saying he was done with her. This wasn't just an unusual marriage, it was starting to look like a strategy, a public-facing structure that allowed Jada to operate on her terms, make her own rules, and shift blame when things went wrong. People close to the industry began to talk, quietly, about how this kind of setup gave certain figures more power, not just in their relationships, but in how they navigated the Hollywood machine. And that's what reportedly disturbed Mark Wahlberg. It wasn't the idea of a non-traditional marriage. It was how that structure could be used to draw others in, to blur ethical boundaries, and to normalize behaviors that would raise alarms in any other context. The Smiths weren't just living differently, they were shaping a new kind of Hollywood rulebook, and Jada was right at the center of it. What Wahlberg saw wasn't a couple just living on their own terms. He saw a network, one that operated under the guise of openness but functioned with precision, and maybe even purpose. The entanglements, the shifting definitions of trust and marriage, the vague denials followed by quiet confirmations, it was all part of a larger pattern, a way to maintain control, protect the brand, and stay untouchable in an industry where power is everything. Wahlberg didn't want to be a part of that, and the deeper he looked, the clearer it became. Walking away wasn't just a personal choice, it was a necessary one. You see, when it comes to Hollywood families, few have been more exposed, more dissected than the Smiths. And while much of the public's focus has been on Will and Jada's unconventional marriage, the more unsettling part of their story is what their children were exposed used to, often with cameras rolling. In 2014, a photo of 13-year-old Willow Smith lying on a bed with 20-year-old actor Moises Arias made its way online. He was shirtless. She wasn't. But the image caused immediate outrage. There was no obvious context, no film project, no explanation that made it sit right. Parents across the internet were furious, not just because of what the photo showed, but because of how her mother, Jada, responded. Instead of acknowledging the concern, Jada called it art and scolded the public for projecting negativity. But the backlash didn't stop. Reports soon surfaced that the LA Department of Children and Family Services had gotten involved, investigating whether the Smiths had failed to protect their daughter. It was one of those moments that lingers, not because it led to charges, but because it raised a bigger question. What kind of environment were the Smith children being raised in? That question would only grow louder in 2023 when Jaden Smith spoke publicly at a psychedelic science conference in Denver. On stage, without hesitation, he revealed that his mother, Jada, was the first person in their family to use psychedelic. He said it openly, like he was talking about taking vitamins. It was just her for a really, really long time, Jaden said. And then eventually it just trickled and evolved and everybody found it in their own ways. He wasn't joking. He was describing a home environment where psychedelic use became normalized, passed down from mother to children, framed as something spiritual, even therapeutic. He claimed it helped heal his relationship with his siblings, that it made them more empathetic, that it opened their minds. But to many listening, especially parents, that didn't sound like therapy. It sounded like grooming. The public reacted swiftly. It wasn't just anger, it was concern. Concern that Jada wasn't just experimenting on her own. She was introducing her children to something far beyond their age, under the belief that it was harmless or even helpful. And for someone like Mark Wahlberg, this wasn't a one-off situation. It was part of a pattern, a household where boundaries kept getting pushed further, where controversy was explained away as growth, where children weren't protected from adult experiences, they were invited into them. For Wahlberg, a father himself, this was personal. He wasn't watching from the outside like a passive observer. He was reportedly paying attention to how some of the biggest names in the industry were raising their kids, not with privacy and structure, but with exposure and risk. This wasn't about judging alternative parenting styles. It was about recognizing a line and watching certain people in Hollywood cross it over and over again. Will and Jada may have defended their choices as progressive, enlightened, or free, but for many, especially those who work in the industry and have seen what happens behind the scenes, it felt more like neglect. And for Wahlberg, it marked another reason to walk away, not just from the Hollywood culture, but from the powerful families influencing it the most. Anyway, another thing that Wahlberg might have been running from is the alleged Hollywood sexuality agenda, one that seems to have Will Smith in its grip. For starters, we have comedian Bert Kreischer, who once shared a bizarre encounter with Will, where he felt pressured to join an exclusive Hollywood gathering. According to Kreischer, when he was just starting out in the industry, he met Smith at a recording studio where he was working on his album, Millennium. The Fresh Prince was apparently impressed with Kreischer's comedy and invited him to go out with him later that evening. Kreischer, who was clueless about what was about to happen, agreed to go to the movies with Smith. However, things got weird when he called his dad to tell him about it, and his dad warned him that Smith might have had other intentions for him. His dad claimed that many men in Hollywood who have had constant S with women often turn to young boys for excitement. Kreischer, initially skeptical about his dad's claims, decided to heed his advice and dressed as sloppily as possible in overalls and a sweater.
And he was like, "Oh, buddy, he's trying to." I go, "What?" And he goes, "Listen, this is very popular in Hollywood. These guys have had so much pussy, they get tired of it, and so they're trying to turn out young boys. That's the only thing that really excites them." Is
when he arrived at the designated meeting spot, a Planet Hollywood restaurant, someone told him to go downstairs, and he assumed he would have to be intimate with Smith and 12 other men. However, to his surprise, when he got to the downstairs screening room, there were 10 black dudes waiting for him, including Jazzy Jeff. While watching the movie, nothing happened, and Kreischer thought he had escaped Smith's intentions. But he was in for another surprise when Smith asked him what he thought of the people in the screening room. To his amazement, Kreischer realized he had watched the movie with a room full of hip-hop icons like Kool Moe Dee and Biz Markie, who Smith had brought in for him to meet.
like, I could have Kumo D. Like, I'm literally like, oh my God.
Kreischer's story has sparked a lot of gossip and speculation in Hollywood, with many wondering if Smith has a history of initiating young celebrities into the industry through his creepy gay S-parties. And you know who else has been a major player in these circles? None other than Sean Diddy Combs, famous for his star-studded and often controversial parties. Diddy's known for inviting the biggest names under one roof, but not just anyone gets in. Those who do make it to the guest list are said to witness shocking events, allegations involving secrecy, indulgence, and even minors. And guess who's reportedly shown up at these gatherings more than once? Will Smith himself. Some say that these parties follow a strict code of silence. What happens there stays there. And there's a heavy price to pay for breaking the unspoken rule. But with more and more voices speaking out about what really goes on, these rumors of hidden lists and questionable behavior are getting harder to ignore. Then there's the talk surrounding Will's relationships within Hollywood's inner circle. Connections that go beyond friendship. Actress Lisa Ray, for instance, claimed that Will Smith's close friend, actor Dwayne Martin, once forced her husband into an uncomfortable relationship with him.
Somehow within that relationship, I lost my husband to Dwayne Martin, and they became better friends than what me and my husband did, and I couldn't understand that for the love of God.
She also said in that interview that Dwayne Martin would introduce her husband to several women who were her friends within the industry, and he would just be outright disrespectful to their union.
The problem was I married a playboy.
Now, she had a great interview with Wendy Williams, but after the interview, a lot of people were still saying that there was something that she just was not quite saying. You see, this is not the first time Dwayne has been suspiciously close to a married man. There have been rumors for quite some time now that Dwayne was introduced to gay relationships by longtime friend Will Smith. Will and Dwayne first met in 1993 on the set of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, when Dwayne was featured in the episode entitled "It Is Better to Have Loved and Lost It," and would go on to establish a nearly lifelong friendship that's now lasted for 3 decades. The pair of actors would frequently share the frame in pictures and would often get spotted enjoying each other's company as the years went by, and they both continued to earn fame in Hollywood. Of course, as some might expect, their friendship and the close bond they shared has sparked rumors of an ongoing bromance, with many fans insisting that something romantic definitely stirred between Martin and Smith. For his part, Will Smith has been known to have little to no boundaries when it comes to engaging with other men. In fact, in 1993, when Will portrayed the role of a gay con artist in 6 Degrees of Separation, and coincidentally around the same time met Dwayne, the rumors about Smith's really lit up, with most fans taking an adamant stand on Will's. During this early rise of gay rumors, both Dwayne and Will adamantly denied the claims, and as at the time they were both married, quickly leading the rumors to die down. Around this time, in 1992, Smith married Cherie Zampino, though divorced the actress in 1995, only to marry Jada Pinkett 2 years later. Dwayne, on the other hand, dated Martin actress Tisha Campbell, and in 1996 they tied the knot. However, this wouldn't be the end of all the bromance rumors. In 2013, the hot topic concerning Will's flared up yet again, this time because of an elusive answer provided by Jada during a candid interview with a well-known tabloid publication. During this time, rumors swirled that suggested trouble in paradise for the married couple, Pinkett and Smith, even that they might soon divorce. However, as everyone who followed the couple's history closely might know, they survived this troubling time in their relationship, only to end up sparking divorce rumors again 9 years later. Anyway, during the interview, Jada responded to a tough question with a slightly vague answer in response to inquiring whether or not Will might be into men. She stated that she continuously encourages Will to be himself, saying that as long as he can look in the mirror and be happy with who he is, he should feel free to be just that, though insisted that she acts as his partner and that he should decide for himself. In any case, Mark Wahlberg didn't leave Hollywood overnight. This wasn't some impulsive decision to escape LA traffic or a headline about taxes gone wild. It was slow, it was deliberate, and it was personal. For most of his career, Wahlberg played the game. He worked with top directors, led blockbuster franchises, and built a brand around grit, discipline, and faith. But behind the scenes, something was shifting. Wahlberg was beginning to feel like he didn't belong, not because he wasn't successful, but because of what success in Hollywood was starting to require. Over time, the things he once tolerated started to wear on him. It wasn't just the egos or the politics, it was the system, the way opportunities were handed out not based on merit, but on relationships. The same people showing up in the same circles, the quiet favors, the power plays, the unspoken rules about who you had to impress and who you couldn't say no to. But what really broke him wasn't the business side. It was the behavior, the culture, the way people were being treated, the way young talent was being handled, and the way people like Jada Pinkett Smith, powerful, charismatic, untouchable, seemed to operate in the middle of it all. Wahlberg reportedly started asking questions. Why were so many young people being brought into the spotlight only to crash out a few years later? Why were so many families in the industry normalizing behavior that wouldn't be acceptable anywhere else? And why was no one holding anyone accountable? The answer, he seemed to realize, was because the system didn't want accountability. It wanted silence. The Smith family wasn't the only example, but it was one of the most visible. From the way their personal life was paraded out as content, to the casual references to abuse and entanglements, to the controversies involving their children. Everything felt like it was being rebranded as empowerment, as evolution, as freedom. But Wahlberg didn't see freedom. He saw danger, not just to reputations, but to real people, especially young ones. He reportedly became more and more uncomfortable with the way children were being treated in the industry, not just exploited for fame, but exposed to adult themes, adult substances, and adult relationships, all under the umbrella of raising them to be free thinkers. For Wahlberg, this wasn't parenting, it was marketing. And worse, it was being celebrated. The final straw, insiders say, was when Wahlberg witnessed how the system closed ranks, how powerful people defended each other, how mistakes were brushed off if the person making them had enough influence or followers, how apologies became PR strategies, how accountability became a performance. Wahlberg didn't want to be a part of that world anymore, not as a parent, not as a man of faith, not as someone trying to live by a different set of values. So he stopped chasing the next big deal. He moved his family to Nevada. He began building something new, something outside the system. A studio, yes, but more than that, a safe space, a clean break. Because at some point, he realized Hollywood wasn't just corrupt, it was contagious. And if he didn't step away, he'd eventually become part of the very thing he couldn't stand. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.